The rain drummed steadily against the tin roof of Jack Dawson's ranch house, a rhythmic sound that usually lulled him into a sense of peace. But tonight was different. Titan, the massive German shepherd he had taken in just a month ago, was pacing near the front door, ears perked, body tense. Something was wrong. Jack set his coffee down and walked to the window, peering into the Montana night. The storm had turned the land into a sea of shifting shadows, but even through the darkness, he could feel it, that creeping unease in his gut that had kept him alive through years of military service. Then he saw it. The faint glow of headlights, barely visible through the heavy downpour, flickered for a moment near the old mine entrance before vanishing. Jack's jaw tightened. That mine had been sealed off for decades. No one had any business being there. Titan let out a low growl, confirming Jack's suspicions. The dog wasn't just reacting to the storm, it had sensed something out there. And Jack had learned in the past month to trust Titan's instincts. He grabbed his rifle from the rack by the door, checking the chamber with a practiced ease. Not that he planned to shoot anyone, but in a place as isolated as his, caution was survival. Moving silently, he unlocked the door and stepped onto the porch, Titan following closely at his side. The rain made it difficult to hear anything beyond the steady drumming against the wooden planks, but Titan's posture remained rigid, scanning the darkness. Jack narrowed his eyes, tracking the spot where the headlights had appeared. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the presence was gone. For a long moment, Jack stood there, watching, waiting. When Titan finally relaxed, he let out a slow breath. Whoever or whatever had been out there was no longer close. Still, he wasn't about to ignore the warning. Turning back inside, Jack locked the door and double-checked the security system, a simple setup, but effective. Titan shook off the rain and settled down by the fire, though his golden brown eyes remained watchful. Jack sat back down at the table, staring at the untouched coffee. His mind drifted to the day he found Titan, lying on the side of the road, battered and half-starved. Even then, the dog had carried himself with a quiet dignity, responding to Jack's commands with a precision that had immediately set off alarms in his mind. This was no ordinary stray. And now, as he looked at the dog stretched out on his floor, Jack knew one thing for certain: Titan wasn't just a pet. He was a soldier. And tonight, that soldier had sensed an enemy in the dark. Jack's fingers tightened around the coffee mug. He had come to Montana to escape conflict, to live out his days in solitude. But something told him that whatever had started tonight was far from over. And Titan was at the center of it all. Jack Dawson was never one to ignore his instincts. And right now, every fiber of his being told him that something was off. The morning after the strange sighting near the mine, he saddled up his old truck and took a drive around the property. Titan sat in the passenger seat, his ears constantly twitching as he scanned their surroundings. The rain had washed away most tracks, but Jack wasn't looking for footprints. He was looking for signs of disturbance, anything that felt out of place. He found it near the northern fence line: cigarette butts. Jack frowned, crouching to inspect them. The wind out here was fierce. Anything lightweight would have been blown away by now. These were fresh. Someone had been standing right here, watching. Titan sniffed the ground and let out a quiet huff, his tail stiff. Jack didn't need the dog's confirmation to know what this meant. Whoever had been snooping around last night had been close. Too close. He picked up one of the butts with a gloved hand and examined it. Expensive brand. Not the type a rancher or local worker would smoke. This wasn't just some drifter looking for shelter from the storm. Jack's gut tightened. Someone had been here for a reason. Back at the ranch, he poured himself another cup of coffee and sat by the kitchen table, flipping through the land documents he had received when he bought the property. He had never paid much attention to the specifics, just another ranch, another plot of land to call home. But now he had questions. Titan lay near the door, watching him with those intelligent eyes, as if waiting for Jack to figure out what he already knew. Then came the knock. It was sharp, precise 2 short raps, followed by a pause, then another knock. Not the casual knock of a neighbor dropping by. Jack set down his coffee and grabbed his shotgun, not pointing it, but keeping it within reach before opening the door. 2 men stood on his porch. Both wore dark suits that looked out of place against the rugged Montana landscape. One was tall, lean, with a calculated smile. The other was broader, his eyes sharp and scanning the ranch like he was already taking inventory. "Mr. Dawson," the taller one said smoothly, extending a hand. "James Victor Lang. My associate here is Mason Cole. We represent Westland Development." Jack didn't take the handshake. "Never heard of it." Lang chuckled, withdrawing his hand without missing a beat. "We specialize in land acquisition and development. We've been purchasing properties in this region and wanted to discuss an opportunity with you." Jack leaned against the doorframe, unimpressed. "I'm not selling." Cole, the quiet one, finally spoke. "We can make it worth your while." His voice was deep, controlled. Far more than market value. Jack let out a slow breath, eyes flicking to Titan, who sat perfectly still, watching the men with an unsettling intensity. "I appreciate the offer," Jack said, keeping his tone neutral, "but I'm not interested." Lang's smile never faltered, but something in his eyes hardened. "At least consider it. Sometimes holding on to the past isn't worth the trouble." Jack didn't blink. "And sometimes knowing when to walk away is the smartest move." A long silence stretched between them before Lang gave a small nod. "Fair enough. If you change your mind." He slipped a card into Jack's hand. Jack took it, but his gut told him these men weren't walking away anytime soon. As their black SUV disappeared down the dirt road, Jack looked at the card. No address. Just a phone number. And underneath it, a single phrase. "Everything has a price." Titan let out a low growl, and Jack ran a hand over his head. "Yeah," he muttered. "I don't like them either." Something told him this wasn't over. Jack tossed the business card onto the table and watched as Titan trotted over, sniffing it before letting out a quiet huff. The dog didn't trust those men any more than he did. Something about them felt wrong. Jack had dealt with land developers before, but these guys weren't just businessmen. Their suits were too sharp, their movements too controlled. They didn't look like people who built things. They looked like people who took them. For the next few days, Jack kept a close watch on the ranch. Titan's behavior became more intense, his patrols more frequent, his posture more alert. Every morning, he circled the perimeter, always pausing near the old mine entrance before moving on. Jack didn't know what the dog was looking for, but it was clear something had put him on edge. Then, on the 3rd night it happened. Jack woke to Titan's deep, guttural growl vibrating through the darkness. He reached for the shotgun by his bed, his pulse steady but his instincts on high alert. The dog was by the window, ears forward, body rigid. Jack slid out of bed, moving as silently as a shadow. He peered outside, eyes scanning the tree line near the mine. At first, he saw nothing. But then, just at the edge of his vision, a flicker of movement. Someone was out there. Jack moved quickly but quietly, pulling on his boots and stepping onto the porch, Titan at his side. The night was still, the air thick with tension. Jack listened, waiting. And then he heard it, a soft crunch of gravel, too deliberate to be an animal. He leveled the shotgun, his voice low and firm. "Whoever's out there, you got 5 seconds to explain yourself before I start shooting." Silence. Then, a rustling. The shadow near the trees shifted, and a voice called out, "Hold your fire. I'm coming out." A figure stepped into the moonlight, hands raised. It was a woman, mid-30s, dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She wore a weathered jacket and jeans, a medical bag slung over her shoulder. Jack didn't lower the shotgun. "Who the hell are you?" She took a cautious step forward. "Dr. Emily Carter. I'm a veterinarian from town." Jack narrowed his eyes. "And you're creeping around my property in the middle of the night because—" Emily exhaled, glancing at Titan. "Because of him." Jack's grip tightened on the shotgun. "Start talking." Emily kept her hands visible. "A friend of mine works in military canine rehabilitation. I ran Titan's microchip through an unofficial database. His records don't make sense." Jack's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Emily took another step forward. "Officially, he's listed as retired. But there's no decommissioning paperwork. No handler reassignment. It's like he just disappeared." She hesitated before adding, "Dogs like him don't just get abandoned." Jack glanced down at Titan, who was watching Emily with sharp, intelligent eyes. Something about what she was saying clicked into place with all the other pieces that weren't adding up: the dog's training, his instincts, his fixation on the mine. Jack lowered the shotgun slightly. "You think someone dumped him here on purpose?" Emily nodded. "Or he escaped." Jack considered that. If Titan had been part of something classified and he'd gotten loose, then someone was looking for him. Someone like Victor Lang and Mason Cole. Jack exhaled slowly. "You're saying he was part of something bigger?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "I think he was trained to protect something." Jack felt the weight of her words settle over him like a storm rolling in. He looked at Titan, who met his gaze without flinching. The dog had been trying to tell him something all along. And now, Jack knew one thing for certain. Whatever Titan was protecting, it was buried right beneath his feet. Jack leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed as he watched Emily spread out a series of printed documents across the wooden table. Titan sat beside him, ears perked, eyes locked onto the papers as if he too understood the weight of what they were about to uncover. Emily tapped one of the pages. "This is what I found after digging deeper into Titan's records. He was assigned to a unit under a program called Project Groundkeeper." Jack frowned. "Never heard of it." "You wouldn't have," Emily said. "It doesn't officially exist." Jack felt his stomach tighten. He had dealt with his share of classified operations during his time in the military, and any program that didn't officially exist was usually tied to something dangerous. "What kind of project are we talking about?" Emily hesitated before answering. Project Groundkeeper was a specialized program that trained canine units to detect specific underground materials. Not explosives. Not drugs. Something else. Jack narrowed his eyes. "What else?" Emily pushed forward a document marked with heavily redacted lines of text. "Rare earth elements. Certain mineral compositions that are used in advanced technology military applications, high-end electronics, even energy research. The kind of stuff that's incredibly valuable and, more importantly, incredibly controlled." Jack exhaled slowly, staring down at the document. "And you're telling me Titan was trained to find this?" Emily nodded. "That's what it looks like. And from what I can tell, he was part of an operation that was scanning certain sites across the country, places suspected to have hidden deposits. Then, 6 months ago, his entire unit was suddenly retired. No explanations. No transfer records." She tapped the paper again. "But here's where it gets weird. I cross-referenced locations where other dogs from his unit were deployed. Almost all of them were places that had been discreetly bought up by private firms in the past year." Jack felt the realization sink in like a heavy weight. "Including my land." Emily nodded. "Exactly. Whoever those men were, Victor Lang and Mason Cole, they don't just want your ranch for grazing land. They know what's under it. And they were hoping you'd be clueless enough to sell." Jack clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "But Titan didn't just show up here by chance." Emily exhaled. I don't think so. I think someone let him go. Someone who wanted to make sure this land stayed protected. Jack looked down at Titan, who met his gaze steadily. The dog had known something all along. He had been guarding it, waiting for Jack to understand. Jack ran a hand over his face, exhaling. So what's the next move? Emily hesitated, then said, I called in a favor. Someone who might be able to tell us exactly what's beneath your feet. Jack's eyes darkened. Who? Before she could answer, headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the night. Jack reached for his shotgun, but Emily shook her head. Relax. She's on our side. Jack wasn't the type to relax. But when the SUV pulled up and a tall woman in a dark jacket stepped out, he recognized the way she moved, the kind of calculated, controlled precision that only came from years of government training. Jack Dawson, the woman said, stepping closer. Agent Lovra Bennett, Federal Intelligence Bureau. Jack kept his expression neutral. Can't say I'm happy to see the feds on my doorstep. Bennett smirked. Well, that makes two of us. But I'm not here to make your life difficult. I'm here because whatever you've got on this land, the wrong people are after it. Jack glanced at Emily, then back at Bennett. You're saying you know what's under my ranch? Bennett folded her arms. Not exactly. But I know enough to tell you that if Lang and Cole are involved, you're sitting on something a hell of a lot bigger than cattle country. Jack exhaled. Then I guess it's time we find out exactly what that is. Jack led Agent Bennett and Emily into his study, where old maps of the ranch were spread across the table. Titan settled beside him, ever watchful. Bennett studied the documents with the practiced eye of someone who had seen classified intelligence before. You've had this land for how long? She asked. 8 years, Jack replied. Bought it from an old rancher who had it in his family for generations. He never mentioned anything about minerals. Bennett smirked. Of course not. He probably didn't know. But someone did. She tapped a section of the map near the old mine. This place has Titan been acting strange around it? Jack nodded. Every damn day. He patrols it like it's a fortress. Bennett exhaled. That's because it is. This isn't just an abandoned mine, Jack. This is a classified site. Decades ago, geological surveys found something here, something valuable enough that the government sealed it up before the public could catch wind of it. Jack crossed his arms. And let me guess, the people behind Project Groundkeeper were sent to monitor it. Bennett nodded. Exactly. But when the project was suddenly shut down, all the dogs, all the handlers, everyone disappeared from the records. Whoever pulled the plug didn't want anyone asking questions. Emily frowned. But why now? If this mine has been here for decades, why are people suddenly interested in it again? Bennett's face hardened. Because technology has caught up. Back then, extracting these minerals wasn't feasible. Now it is. And Lang and Cole? They work for private interests who would pay a fortune to get their hands on this site before the government can reclaim it. Jack clenched his jaw. And Titan? Bennett looked down at the dog. He was trained to guard locations like this. But when his unit was retired, someone must have cut him loose instead of putting him down. He ended up here because he knew this place needed protecting. Jack exhaled slowly. It all made sense now. Titan hadn't just been wandering. He had been stationed. And Jack, whether he had wanted to or not, had been dragged into something far bigger than himself. Bennett pulled out a tablet, swiping through files. We don't have much time. Lang and Cole are making their move. I ran a background check on them. Westland Development is a shell corporation. They don't build anything. They acquire land for extraction. And they don't take no for an answer. Jack's gaze darkened. So what's our play? Bennett locked eyes with him. We get to the mine before they do. We find out exactly what's down there. And we make sure they don't get their hands on it. Jack glanced at Titan, who was already on his feet, tail stiff, ears forward. The dog was ready. So was he. Jack drove through the darkness, the headlights of his truck cutting through the thick Montana fog as he sped toward the old mine. Emily sat beside him, gripping a flashlight, while Bennett was in the back, checking her firearm. Titan stood alert, his head near the window, eyes locked on the road ahead. They all knew what was coming. Lang and Cole weren't going to wait any longer. As they neared the mine entrance, Jack spotted fresh tire tracks in the dirt. Multiple vehicles. "They're already here," he muttered. Bennett pulled out a pair of night vision binoculars and scanned the area. 3 SUVs, 1 truck carrying equipment. "Looks like they brought a drilling team." She lowered the binoculars. "They're not just scouting anymore. They're moving in." Jack tightened his grip on the wheel. "Then we move faster." He killed the engine a safe distance away, shutting off the headlights. The group moved on foot, keeping low as they approached the entrance. Titan moved ahead, silent and precise, his training kicking in as he scouted the path. Jack followed his lead, his instincts telling him to trust the dog. As they got closer, they could hear voices. Lang was barking orders. "We don't have all night. Get that entrance open. I want full access before sunrise." Jack and the others crept forward until they had a clear view. Lang and Cole stood near a team of workers who were setting up portable floodlights and unloading equipment. A massive steel door Jack had never noticed before stood at the entrance of the mine. It looked reinforced, like something meant to keep people out. Cole was holding a blueprint, pointing at a control panel mounted beside the door. "This lock system is old, but it's military grade. We'll have to force it." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't some small-time operation. They had blueprints. They had specialists. This was planned long before they ever approached him to buy the land. Bennett leaned in. "If they break through that door, they're not just going to dig. They're going to strip this place clean." Jack exhaled. "Then we stop them." Bennett nodded. "I can call for backup, but we won't have time to wait. We need to slow them down." Emily whispered, "How?" Jack looked at Titan, then at the electrical setup for the floodlights. "We cut the power. Take away their vision. Take away their advantage." Bennett smirked. "Now you're thinking like a soldier." Jack glanced at Titan. "Let's see what this dog was really trained for." Titan's ears perked, his body tensed. He was ready. So were they. Jack moved first, keeping low as he slipped around the side of the mine entrance, Titan right beside him. Bennett followed, staying in the shadows, while Emily remained behind cover. The floodlights cast harsh white beams over the rocky terrain, but Jack had already spotted their weakness. The generator was exposed, sitting a few yards away from the SUVs. If they took it out, the entire area would go dark. Bennett motioned to Titan, giving a silent command. The dog immediately understood, slinking toward the far side of the camp, moving like a shadow. Jack watched as Titan weaved between equipment and vehicles, staying unseen. The dog had been trained for this. Jack exhaled, then crept toward the generator. Lang's voice echoed through the site. "Move faster. I want that door open now." A worker was setting up a cutting torch against the steel door. Sparks flew as the metal began to glow red hot. They were minutes away from breaking through. Jack knew they had no time to waste. He reached the generator, feeling the rumble of its engine beneath his fingers. He yanked out his knife, slicing through the fuel line. Gasoline spilled onto the dirt. Then, with one quick motion, he flipped the main power switch and ripped out the wiring. Everything went black. Shouts erupted across the site. Lang's voice rang out. "What the hell just happened? Get those lights back on." Titan struck next. In the confusion, The dog lunged at one of the workers near the control panel, knocking him to the ground. Chaos spread as men scrambled to regain order. Bennett fired a warning shot into the air. "Federal agents, drop your weapons and step away from the entrance." For a split second, silence. Then, Cole growled, "Take cover." Gunfire erupted. Jack grabbed Emily and pulled her behind a stack of crates as bullets tore through the night. Bennett returned fire, keeping Lang's men pinned down. Titan stayed low, weaving through the chaos, his instincts razor sharp. Jack knew they were outnumbered. They needed to end this fast. He spotted Cole moving toward the steel door, trying to finish cutting through. Jack cursed under his breath, grabbed his rifle, and lined up a shot. He squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck just inches from Cole's hand, forcing him to recoil. Jack stood, leveling his aim. "Step away. Now." Cole hesitated, then raised his hands. Lang, realizing they were outmatched, threw his gun to the ground, his face twisting with fury. "You have no idea what you're stopping, Dawson." Jack smirked. "I think I do." Titan let out a deep growl as Bennett stepped forward, securing the scene. It was over. But Jack knew this fight wasn't finished yet. Dawn broke over the Montana horizon, casting a golden light across the battered mining site. Federal backup had arrived, securing the area while Lang, Cole, and their men were handcuffed and loaded into black SUVs. Bennett supervised the operation, ensuring that every piece of stolen equipment was confiscated. It was over. At least for now. Jack stood near the mine entrance, watching as Titan sniffed the ground. His posture relaxed for the first time in days. The dog knew the threat was gone. Jack ran a hand over Titan's head. "Hell of a job, boy." Emily approached, arms crossed. "You realize this isn't going to just go away, right?" Jack sighed, glancing at the sealed steel door. "Yeah, but at least we bought time." Bennett joined them, flipping through a folder of classified documents. "The government will officially take control of this land as a protected research site. You'll keep your ranch, Jack, but you'll also have new responsibilities." Jack smirked. "Let me guess. I'm now the unofficial guardian of whatever's down there." Bennett shrugged. "Let's just say, Titan was trained to find the right person to protect this place. And he picked you." Jack looked down at the dog, who met his gaze with that same unshakable loyalty. He had come to Montana looking for solitude, but fate had other plans. Titan hadn't just been protecting the land. He had been leading Jack to his real purpose. Emily nudged him. "So, are you staying?" Jack exhaled, looking across the vast stretch of land he had called home for years. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'm staying." Titan wagged his tail, as if he had known all along. And maybe, just maybe, he had.